What's going on? Vincent Rappisardi, BigBlueUnbiased.com. In this video, I want to talk about Leonard Williams. So since Leonard Williams was acquired from the Jets last season, people just can't stop talking about the trade. The Giants were a rebuilding team giving up a third-round pick for a player who was set to become a free agent. So the opposition to the trade makes sense, and I understand it. But I do want to point out a false narrative. People are judging Leonard Williams simply based on his sack total. But if you look at the advanced metrics, they tell a completely different story. And I know I talk about hidden value a lot when it comes to advanced metrics, but this is literally the perfect example. Williams only had half a sack in 2019, but he finished with 23 quarterback pressures and 16 quarterback hits. He actually had more quarterback hits and quarterback pressures than DeForest Buckner. And since entering the league, he's had more quarterback hits than Fletcher Cox, Grady Jarrett, Eric Armstead, Geno Atkins, and Cameron Hayward. He also has more quarterback hits over the course of his career than Dante Fowler and Bud Dupree combined. Last year, he ranked second among interior defensive linemen in quarterback knockdowns. The year before that, he ranked fourth. Williams was also one of 5 interior defensive linemen last year who had at least 23 quarterback pressures and a missed tackle percentage of less than 10%. So not only did he rush the passer well, but he was also a good tackler, which likely means that he also played the run very well. As I've mentioned before, the Giants finished 5th in expected points added, also known as EPA, against the run last year. You'd have to think Williams had something to do with that. Last year I actually did a YouTube video on Williams and some of the hidden value that he brings. So this play specifically on Monday Night Football against the New England Patriots, Leonard Williams doesn't get credited with a sack or an interception, but he caused it. So let's watch this. Williams gets pressure on Brady, hits his arm. That's not a sack. It's intercepted. He doesn't get credited for the interception, but guess what? Huge play, and it wouldn't have happened unless he did that. And here's another video from the same game where Leonard Williams doesn't get credited with a sack. There's no fancy play. It's not an interception, but he forces an intentional grounding penalty. He forces pressure on Tom Brady. He completely disrupts the play. That doesn't show up in your traditional box score. There's no column of, forced intentional groundings for Leonard Williams. At least I don't see that in the traditional ESPN or whatever box score you use. I don't see that. But guess what? Completely disrupted this play. He got pressure on Brady, hit Brady, and forced a penalty and forced a bad decision. Now let's get into the value of the trade. Many people don't like the fact that the Giants gave up a 3rd-round pick in a year in which they were rebuilding, and another draft pick that's going to turn into a 5th-round pick in next year's draft. But here's the thing. In Dave Gettleman's 3 off-seasons as Giants general manager, he's had a top 6 pick in all 3 years. And in the 2019 draft, he had 3 first-round picks. So Gettleman has obviously went the route of adding young, controllable assets to his football team. But at the same time, you do have to add some accomplished players. And as we saw this offseason, players like Chris Jones and Eric Armstead were franchise tagged. Who's to say Leonard Williams wouldn't have been franchise tagged if the Giants or another team didn't acquire him in a trade last year? You also have to consider the value of an interior defensive lineman who can create constant pressure. As I mentioned with Armstead and Jones, those teams didn't let them walk. And if you go back to the Buckner trade, the Colts giving up a 1st-round pick, the 13th overall pick in the draft, and then signing Buckner to an $84 million deal just goes to show how teams value a good pass-rushing interior defensive lineman, which all of a sudden makes the trade for Williams not as egregious as many people made it out to be. Williams is currently getting paid over $16 million with the current franchise tag. And while a lot of people are not happy with that large number, it's actually not as big as you would think. Currently, he's the 7th highest paid interior defensive lineman based on average salary. When the tag was placed on Williams, there was a report that he will likely sign an extension somewhere in the $10 to $12 million range per season. If that happens to be true, Williams would then be paid around the 13th or 15th highest average salary among interior defensive linemen. Again, I understand the opposition to the trade, but you can only judge it based on the value of other trades or other signings that are happening around the league. And at the end of the day, the context of the deal is not as bad as the media has made it out to be. So that's all I got. Vincent Rappisardi, BigBlueUnbiased.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Vince Rappisardi. I also have a podcast, the Big Blue Unbiased Podcast, which is available on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere else. If you like this kind of content, give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe. Thanks again, Vincent Rappisardi, BigBlueUnbiased.com.